So the man who wrote the death penalty statute in the state of Tennessee is coming down hard on the botched execution and how the medical staff carried it out. Our team coverage continues now with Andrew Douglas live here in the studio. Andrew?
Joe, I spoke with David Rabin. He is a practicing attorney in Nashville. He wrote that death penalty statute back in 1976. That statute did not include how the death penalty would be administered, and he immediately criticized the medical staff and called today's process a catastrophic failure. He also said not only will Tony Carruthers' attorney file lawsuits, but what happened today will have a ripple effect for other death row inmates.
His lawyers are going to file a barrage of litigation to stop this. They're going to say that they had one chance to execute him and they didn't do it right, and therefore he should be granted an indefinite reprieve. There's some precedent for that in other states. But I think that this is going to continue with other cases. Now everybody else on death row is going to say, well, look what happened. If they mess this guy up, they're going to mess my case up too. And this is going to slow this thing down even more.
Keep in mind, executions were put on hold in Tennessee 4 years ago when Governor Lee ordered an independent review of the state's procedures and brought in new leadership to oversee the process. It wasn't until last year that executions continued after the protocol was revised. And at that time, nearly 20 medical professionals sent a letter to the governor asking him to pause executions. They had concerns about the state's reliance on certain drugs used in lethal injection cases. That was 4 years ago. 4 years later, a botched execution and another execution on pause. Live in the studio tonight, Andrew Douglas, Action News 5.